Hi and welcome to the new series of videos on the English grammar. In this series we'll be talking about tenses. So how many tenses are there in the English language? Well, some would say there are three: present, past and future, which is very logical and these people will be right. Others would say there are 12 because each of these three tenses we can divide into four: simple, continuous or progressive, perfect and perfect progressive. There are though other opinions. You might read there are 16 tenses in English, which is also correct because if we add the future in the past to these 12 tenses, we will get 16. These 16 tenses that we are talking about are in the active voice. What about the passive voice? Well, there are 8 tenses that can be used in the passive voice, which makes 24. It doesn't really matter whether you believe that there are 12, 16, 24 tenses in the English language. What does matter is to be able to use all these formulas that you see now on the screen in your daily communication. English has a perfectly structured system, and I hope that I will prove that to you with a series of lessons. And as the subject is very complex and we treat things comprehensively, on this channel we will have 3 big lessons, and in each of them I will speak about 4 different tenses. Today we'll be talking about the present tenses. So let us begin. Before we dive deeper, I will speak here about the 12 grammatical tenses. I will call them grammatical in order to differentiate them from just tenses, which are present, past and future. There are 4 aspects and 3 tenses in English. By aspects, we understand qualities of actions that are performed. For example, we have a simple aspect. That means that the actions that fall under this category are simple occurrences that happen from time to time or are generally true. Actions as they are and states as they are. For example, the sentence, "The sun rises in the east," is in the simple aspect. That's the present simple tense. It just expresses an action as it is. It arises always, right? Or, "My brother is a clever boy." What does this sentence tell us? It simply states the state. It tells us that he is clever. Then we have the progressive aspect. Things here are in progress. Progressive aspect tells us about processes, helps us to express things that are continuing. The perfect aspect. It comes from the Latin verb perfectum, which means complete. Here we speak about things which are complete, of which we can see results. And perfect progressive aspect. This aspect helps us speak about things that are partially complete because they are still in progress. So we already have some results of these actions, but still they are continuing, and that means that we will get more results. Okay, then we have 3 tenses. Obviously, that's present, past, and future. Now, when we combine the 4 aspects with the 3 tenses, we get our 12 grammatical tenses. Let's look now at the table of the 12 active tenses. The 3 tenses are present, past, and future, and the 4 aspects are simple, or it's also called indefinite, progressive, or it's sometimes called continuous, perfect and perfect continuous, or perfect progressive. As you see, each of the 3 tenses can be expressed in each of the 4 aspects, and thus we have the present simple tense, he works hard. The present continuous or the present progressive tense, he is working hard. The present perfect tense, he has worked hard. And the present perfect continuous or the present perfect progressive tense, he has been working hard. The same is true for the past. We have the past simple tense, he worked hard, the past continuous tense, he was working hard, the past perfect tense, he had worked hard, and the past perfect continuous or the past perfect progressive tense, he had been working hard. And the same is true for the future. The future simple, he will work hard, the future continuous, he will be working hard, the future perfect, he will have worked hard, and the future perfect continuous, he will have been working hard. The simple, the progressive, the perfect, and the perfect progressive or the perfect continuous aspects are present in each of the three tenses. Okay? Looking at this, you cannot but admire the system of the English tenses. It's very logical and very well structured. It helps you to express both the quality of action you are talking about and where exactly on the timeline the action is taking place. You can make a screenshot of this slide. You can elaborate this table, adding markers to each of these tenses or the formulas of how these tenses are formed in the future. Now, let's cut the timeline into three parts or sections. You can also imagine three different rooms. A room for the past, a room for the present, and a room for the future. So in the past, in that section of the timeline, there are things that happened once or 3 days ago, that happened at 10 o'clock last night, that happened in 1992, or that happened yesterday. All of them belong to the realm of the past. In the present room or in the present section of the timeline, we have things that are going on at the moment or happen these days or are still going on. Things that are actual and real and present, things that we do currently or that we are doing today. In the future or in that future room that you imagined or on that section of the timeline, we have things that are yet to come anytime soon, tomorrow, that will happen in a week, next time, or one day. Each of these rooms that you imagined, that you visualized, contains each of the four aspects. So in the past, we will have 4 different grammatical tenses to speak about things that dwell in the past. For example, when we want to say that something happened once upon a time, we will use the past simple tense to speak about a simple action or unidentified action somewhere in the past. When we want to speak about something that was going on at 10 o'clock last night, we'll address the continuous aspect. We will use the past continuous or the past progressive tense because we need to express a process. We need to speak about the process that was going on at a particular moment in time in the past. When we have 2 different actions both in the past and one preceded the other, we will choose the past perfect tense or the past perfect continuous tense to speak about something that both preceded another action in the past and continued for a while. The same will be true for the present and for the future rooms. We have 4 aspects in each of these rooms. We have the present simple to speak about something that happens at present regularly or usually. We have the present continuous tense to speak about something that is going on right now. We have the present perfect tense to show that something has brought a result into present and is true now, right? And the perfect continuous tense to speak about something that is still going on, bringing us results. We have the same 4 aspects in the future as well. The future simple to speak about unidentified, simple things that will happen one day. The the future continuous tense to speak about a particular moment in the future and the process that will be happening at that particular moment in the future. The future perfect tense to speak about things that will have a result by a particular moment in the future, and the future perfect continuous tense to speak about things that will be going on for a while and will bring a particular result. This being said, let's look at this. In the present room, thus, we have the present simple tense, the present perfect progressive tense, the present progressive tense, and the present perfect tense. We see that the present perfect progressive and present perfect tense, they are somewhat in between the present and the past. We can say that these tenses kind of coexist in two rooms. These are the actions that actually happened in the past, but are still important. They influence the present. They bring results into the present. That's why we consider them to be present tenses. Then we have future simple, future progressive, future perfect progressive, and future perfect in the future room. And we have past simple, past progressive, past perfect, and past perfect progressive in the past room. Let's look at some markers that we can use with each of these tenses. For already today's will be used with the present perfect progressive. Just, I have just done something, will be used with the present perfect tense. At this very moment, we will speak about this very moment in the present progressive tense. And if we want to speak about the present in general, things that are true today and were true yesterday and will be true tomorrow, we'll use the present simple tense. Each of the tenses thus has its own markers, has its own words and expressions that are mostly used with this particular tense. In a manner, they predetermine what tense you should form your sentence in when you want to use this or that time marker. I've added one marker per each tense, but that doesn't mean that each of these tenses only has one particular expression or one particular word that is used with it. What you see now are the most characteristic expressions and adverbial modifiers of time that are used with this or that tense. Again, I suggest that you write them down, though we'll be speaking about each of the tenses in detail and we'll mention more markers. This timeline with the names of the tenses and expressions that are very particular of each of the tenses might be very useful. So please make a photo of the screen or, which is actually better, write it all down. Today we'll be speaking about the present tenses. We'll tackle 4 of the 12 grammatical tenses of the English language today. They are the present simple tense, the present progressive tense, the present perfect tense, the present perfect progressive tense. Let's look at the examples of each of the tenses. In the present simple tense, we might say something like, I read a lot of books, which is a general truth. In present progressive tense, we will say, I am reading a book now. This tense helps us express things which are going on right now. The present perfect tense, I have read a good book. The present perfect tense helps us express things which have already happened but brought a result. I have read a good book. I can share it with you. Or let's discuss it. The present perfect progressive tense helps us speak about things that have started in the past but are still ongoing. I have been reading science fiction for a while now. I started doing it, let's say 2 years ago, and now science fiction is the only genre I read. So I have been reading science fiction for a while now. As you see, basically we speak about the same thing. We have the same verb in all of the sentences. To read, and the general idea here is that I read, but I read differently in each of the sentences. Each of the tenses helps us express a different quality of this action. We'll begin with the present simple tense. That's always a dilemma for me because when a person starts learning the English language, obviously he or she will need to learn how to say, my name is, I work as a, I live in a. And these are things that you express in simple tenses, right? And needless to say that the simple tenses are the first group of tenses that you start with when you teach a language or when you learn a language, which is logical, right? But the present simple tense as well as the past simple tense are the most complicated tenses as far as their formation goes. So what do we see here? In affirmative sentences, you use the first form of the verb with all the persons except the third person singular. In the third person singular, that is he, she, it, you need to add the ending s to your verb, which brings us he reads, she reads, it reads. When you form negative sentences, you need an auxiliary verb to which you will add the particle not, because you cannot just say I not read. We always add the particle not to a verb, which is an auxiliary verb or a modal auxiliary verb, but we cannot leave it like that, I not read, yeah? It's not a universal negative particle that you can just put into a sentence and make it negative. So we have two auxiliary verbs, or let's say two versions of the auxiliary verb, do and does in the present simple tense. Logically, we use do for all the persons except the third person singular. In the third person singular, we use does, but now we should get rid of the ending as in the main verb. So what you say? He does not read. Your main verb does not have this ending as anymore. He doesn't read, she doesn't read, it doesn't read. Normally, we shorten doesn't, yeah, we don't say does not. We use the full form does not only when we want to stress the negation. In interrogative sentences, you will also need your auxiliary verb because that's how we form questions in English. We put auxiliary verbs or auxiliary modal verbs at the beginning of the question. So you use do with all the persons except the third person singular. Do I read books? Do we read books? Do you read books? But does he read books? Does she read books? Does it read books? And do they read books? So that's the first challenge that you have. The ending as that should be added to the verb that goes with the third person singular or to an auxiliary verb. And that's quite a challenge, believe me or not, because I know students who are pretty good at English, but yet they sometimes forget about this ending. I said this is the first challenge, but that's not the only one. But before we proceed, let's sum it up. So in the present simple tense, we say I read books, I don't read books, do I read books? Yes, I do. Or do you read books? Yes, I do. When we speak about the third person singular, that is he, she, or it, we need to add the ending as to the main verb or to the auxiliary verb and get rid of the ending at the end of the main verb. He reads books. He doesn't read books. Does he read books? Yes, he does. We read books. We don't read books. Do we read books? Yes, we do. She reads books. She doesn't read books. Does she read books? Yes, she does. This is how we form statements, negative statements, and questions in the present simple with the first person singular plural and the third person singular. Now, the next challenge that we have with the present simple tense is the verb to be, which is irregular in the present. That brings us to three forms of to be: am, is, and are. Let's look at how we change the verb to be. To be is an anomalous finite. That means that that's a verb that has its own forms, that changes according to its specific system. We say I am and I am not. We don't have amn't, we don't have a shortened form, so we can say I'm not or I am not. I'm not a bookworm or I am a bookworm. We are or we are not, we aren't bookworms. You are not, you aren't a bookworm. He is or he isn't a bookworm. She is or she isn't a bookworm. It is or it isn't a bookworm. They are or they aren't bookworms. To be is considered to be an auxiliary verb, so it takes not. It forms this negative form, not like the rest of the verbs. This is what's important, because with the rest of the verbs you will have do and does, which will function as auxiliaries and will add not to form negative sentences. To be will form this negative forms by itself. You just add not to the verb to be, and that's it. To be functions both as an auxiliary and as a main verb in this case. What do we do when we form questions? Well, as all the auxiliary verbs go to the beginning of your question, we do the same with to be. We ask, am I a bookworm? Are we bookworms? Are you a bookworm? Is he, is she, is it a bookworm? Are they bookworms? Everything is just like you would do with any other auxiliary verb. So you don't have a second verb in this case, right? You don't have a main verb because your main verb is an auxiliary verb. That makes the structure of your question a little bit different. But the main principle, that is the auxiliary goes to the beginning of the question, still remains. Now let's compare. You don't read books. What do we have? The formula of the sentence is subject, auxiliary verb, plus not plus the main verb plus the object. When your verb is to be, the structure is subject, auxiliary verb, not, and object. You see? So these formulas help us see the structure better. Now let's look again at the examples. Another challenge is the verb to have. That's the last one, by the way. Why is it a challenge? Because to have can be used in two different ways. You know, we have to have and to have got, which basically mean the same: to possess something or to own something in majority of cases. But there are situations in which you will not be able to use have got. Only have is possible. But apart from that, have has two forms. It's has in the third person singular and have in the rest of the cases. Sounds pretty convoluted, doesn't it? Let's pay closer attention to the examples. We say, I, we, you have a chalet. He, she, it has a name. I, we, you don't have a chalet. He, she, it doesn't have a name. Do I, do we, do you have a chalet? Does he, does she, does it have a name? Here you see that have behaves like the rest of the verbs that take auxiliary verbs do and does. In the third person singular, though, it changes its form. Yeah, so we don't say haves, we say has. Yeah, it has a specific form. But the rest is just the same as with the rest of the verbs. Yeah, we say doesn't have. We drop this ending s, so we have and doesn't. We can also say that s goes into does. Okay, does he, she, it have a name? The same. You put the auxiliary at the beginning of your question, and now you have the main verb in its first form and does that contains this ending s for the third person singular. But what happens if we use have or has got? Well, has is still used for the third person singular, but in negative sentences and in questions, you don't have any auxiliaries because have works like an auxiliary verb. Got is your main verb. So we say, I, we, you have got a chalet, he, she, it has got a name. I, we, you haven't got a chalet, he, she, it hasn't got a name. Have I, we, you got a chalet? Has he, she, it got a name? You see, instead of using do or does, have or has is used as an auxiliary verb. Why do we have that in the language? Well, without diving deep into history, we won't be able to answer that question, and I'm not sure whether we are able to answer that question at all, but what we should remember is that have and have got both coexist in the language, and in majority of cases in your everyday life you will use them interchangeably. My suggestion would be that you pick up one of them. So either you say I have, or you make a habit of using have got. Up to you. The thing you should remember though is the one that I have already mentioned. You won't be able to use have got and have interchangeably in all the situations. Let me show you why. Have equals have got when we talk about relationships. For example, you can say I have a sister or she's got two brothers. They are equal when we speak about possessions. Anne has a new camera or Dave has got a new phone. You can use them interchangeably when you speak about features of something or somebody. The house doesn't have a garden. My sister has got freckles. When you speak about illnesses, they are also interchangeable. She has a terrible headache. He's got pain in his back. And when you speak about appointments, you can also use both of them. I have an interview tomorrow, or my sister's got her English exam in 2 days. Once again, please pay attention to how your sentence will change depending on whether you choose have or have got. Memorize this table, make a copy of it for yourself, pick up a variant that you like more and use it. Now let's see where they are not interchangeable. Have got cannot be used in past, future and progressive tenses. We will have a sister soon. When I was a child, I had a dog. When we speak about hygiene and things we do with our appearance, he has a shower 2 times per day. When you drink things and eat things, when you speak about food and drinks, I'm having breakfast now. She usually has 3 cups of coffee per day. When you talk about your experience, the children had a lot of fun at the museum. We always have a good time when we meet. When you speak about activities, let's have a walk in the garden. You need to have a good sleep. When you speak about communication, we had an argument yesterday. I need to have a word with him. You see that in many cases here, have doesn't literally mean possess. So it's not a synonym of to possess, to own. These are cases where you cannot use have got. Okay, so these were the 3 main challenges, as I call them, of the present simple tense. Now, what I say now will help you structure the verbs and how they are used in this tense and in other tenses as well. So let me introduce you to this. All the verbs in the English language we can divide into anomalous finites and all other verbs. What the heck does this mean, anomalous finites? Well, they are to be, to have, and modal verbs. As you now understand, these guys have their peculiarities. They can function as auxiliary verbs in some contexts or in some situations, and they have their own forms. So these are the verbs that you should treat separately. You should learn their forms by heart. All other verbs behave similarly. Let's take the verb to drive. He drives a Buick. He doesn't drive anymore, does he drive? It takes an auxiliary verb in the present simple, doesn't, the subject is the third person singular, and that's clear. Let's take another verb, to plant. She plants English roses. She doesn't plant roses. Does she plant roses? Again, the situation is the same. To clean, let's take another example. I clean the house on Sundays. I don't clean the house. Do you clean the house? And this is what all the verbs in the English language do in the present simple tense, but not to be, to have, and not the modal verbs. Now let's look at what we do with to be, to have, and with the modal verbs. To be, he is a civil engineer. He isn't a civil engineer. Is he a civil engineer? We use is because we talk about the third person singular, which is he in this case, and we need a special form of the verb to be, which is. To have, we can say she has a hamster or she has got a hamster. She doesn't have a hamster, she hasn't got a hamster. Does she have a hamster? Has she got a hamster? We can go both ways, yeah, we can use both has and has got. Have can function as an auxiliary verb, so there is a set of rules to follow. Let's take a modal verb, must. I must go now. I mustn't go there. Must I go? As we have already discussed the 9 modal verbs of the English language, if you need to refresh your knowledge on the modal verbs, please go to the description of this video. There you will find lots of links to different modal verbs, because I have already talked about all of them on this channel. So what do we have here? Every modal verb behaves like a typical auxiliary verb. That is, it helps us to form negative statements, adding not to itself, and in question it goes to the first place in order to help us form a question. Yeah, must I go? The same paradigm is for all the auxiliary verbs. So actually, your main challenge lies in the left side of the screen. You have to learn the forms of these several anomalous finites by heart. There are not many of them. They're basically to be, to have, and the 9 modal verbs, and some semi-modal verbs. They also behave strangely, let's say so, and you can also see that in my videos. The rest of the verbs are easy peasy because they always do the same things in all the tenses. They take auxiliary verbs. Knowing what auxiliary you need to use in each of the tenses, you'll be good to go. Then you will have to learn the table of the irregular verbs, and that's it. Let's continue. Before we proceed with the rules when we can use the present simple tense, let's pay attention to this teeny tiny ending s. He plays golf, but he goes to the gym. Thus we have 2 different variants of this ending. With the verbs to do and to go, we use ending es, so we kind of add additional vowel, but we read goes and does. It's not goes and not does, yeah, but goes and does. She goes to the market, she does shopping there. Also, please note that sometimes you might need to have 2 do's in your sentence. What does it mean? Your main verb might be to do, and your auxiliary in the present simple is to do. So thus you have double do in your sentence. She does shopping. She doesn't do shopping. Does she do shopping? Yes, she does. Please don't forget that one of these verbs is the main verb, the thing that you do, the action, and the second one is just an auxiliary verb that helps you to form the present simple tense. You need to use both. You must use both. Otherwise, your sentence will not be clear. I do shopping. I don't do shopping. Do you do shopping? Yes, I do. And one more thing. For verbs that add in the letters s, z, ch, sh, and x, we add an E and an S in the third person singular. So that we do in order for our words to sound more beautiful. That's the only reason why. She kisses her friends on the cheek. He wishes good night to his little daughter. Every person searches for happiness. The teacher assesses her students' knowledge. The sea splashes against the shore. So if you say kiss, it would be horrible if you needed to say kiss or wish. Yeah, that's inconvenient to pronounce, and that sounds scary. So we say kisses and wishes, and our speech becomes more melodic. The ending s or the affix s may be pronounced differently depending on what precedes it. So you know those variations, right? Sometimes it is read like s, sometimes like z, and sometimes like is. So what's the deal? We read this ending as s after voiceless consonants. That is, after the sounds p, t, k, f, and th. They are not voiced. Yeah, they are voiceless. He works, she wants, he jumps, she laughs. We read this ending as z after voiced consonants. That is, the majority of the consonants of the English language sounds b, d, g, j, l, m, n, n, r, v, w, y, th, z. And vowels. We have 5 letters that stand for vowels, but plenty of different sounds. He reads, she leaves, he sees, she loves. You see the sound is bright, yeah, because those consonants like b, d, g, and those vowels, they make your sounds brighter. And thus the ending s also becomes voiced. And we read is after consonants and consonant combinations, which are s, z, sh, and zh. He passes, she pushes, he teaches, he judges. Actually, when your word ends in something that sounds like hissing, to have a more beautiful sounding, we say is instead of s, right? Also, we have to remember about vowel interchange when we speak about the present simple tense, as the ending s, which we have in the third person singular, will change the verbs sometimes. What do I mean? When your verb ends in y, y is changed into I if it is preceded by a consonant. That's important. So we say to study, he studies. To try, she tries. The verb study ends in y, and before it we have a consonant d, sound d. That's why we change y into I. When there is no consonant immediately before y, we don't change y. We don't do anything. We just add the ending s and that's it. But it will be voiced, yeah? It will be bright. To play, he plays. To stay, she stays. Please remember these rules. They will make your life much easier. That will put an end to your guesses why and where we need to make those changes. This is all you need to know. Now let's talk about what the present simple tense can express. The simple aspect of the present helps us to speak about facts, repeated or habitual actions. Actions and states characterizing a given person or thing, feelings and desires, universal truths or natural laws, states at the present moment, instructions and directions, future actions in adverbial clauses of time and condition, and future actions that are fixed and unlikely to change. You see that the first and the second options are underlined. This is because in majority of situations you will use the present simple to speak about facts and things that you do repeatedly in your everyday life. That's where we use this tense predominantly. Of course, we also often speak in the present simple when we describe something. when we speak about what we feel or what we believe in, or when we describe another person, or when we speak about some general things, when we talk about some laws of nature, states of affairs, whatever. Pay attention to the last 2 points here. 8 future actions in adverbial clauses of time and condition. As we do not use the future tense in those clauses, we use the substitute, we use the present simple. I'm talking about sentences like, I will call you when I am at home. We don't say, I will call you when I will be. You say, I will call you when I am at home. Or, if the weather is fine, we will go to the park. And in this, when I am at home is an adverbial clause of time, while if the weather is fine is a conditional clause. We cannot use any future tenses here, right? Number 9, future actions that are fixed and unlikely to change. That's when we speak about timetables and schedules, mostly about transport. For example, the train departs at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Now let's look at some examples and explain to ourselves why the present simple tense is used in each of them. First, penguins live almost exclusively in the southern hemisphere. Well, that's a fact. They just live there. Yeah, we state a fact. To make a wreath, you take small bundles of flowers and wire them tied to the wreath form one by one. That's an instruction, and we give instructions, we write recipes in the present simple. You do this, you do that. We can also use the imperative mood here, yeah? Do this or do that. But if it's not the imperative mood, it's the present simple in the indicative mood. I want to spend this weekend with my family. We speak about our desires, feelings, and those things, those states of our mind and heart and soul, we can express with the help of the present simple tense. Helen sings and plays the piano beautifully. We describe what another person can do. We speak of somebody's skills. That's a kind of state in which this person is, yeah, or his or her reality. She sings, yeah, she can sing. Tomorrow is Sam's birthday. That's an interesting one. As you see, we speak about the future here. So why don't we use the future simple tense? Well, if you think about it for a little while, it will become logical to you that somebody's birthday is actually a fact, not an event that will happen in the future. Because when we speak about things that will happen in the future, we speak about possibilities, chances. But somebody's birthday is already a reality. This person was born on a particular day of a particular month. And even when Sam dies eventually, yeah, having lived to his 100 plus years, this date will still remain his date of birth. It will never change. We cannot change that. So we treat such things as the present. It's not natural for an English speaker to say Sam's birthday will be tomorrow. Why? Yeah, because, well, isn't that obvious that his birthday is tomorrow, right? The same is true for all the holidays and things which we do regularly, things that happen regularly. Number 6. Do you know anybody who speaks Japanese? We have 2 predicates here. Do you know? Knowing is a state. We express states with the help of the present simple tense. Who speaks Japanese? That's another kind of state another person is in. The state of possessing some knowledge and the state of being able to speak Chinese. That's not temporary, that's permanent. That's how things are. What's this? Do you hear the sound? Do you hear the sound? So when we speak about perception, do you hear? We cannot say, are you hearing in the present continuous tense, for example. We would either say, did you? If we speak about the past, or do you hear in general. So the present simple helps us express states at the present moment. I don't feel like going out tonight. That's another example of a state. Yeah, I don't feel like, I don't have a desire, I'm not in a mood. Sweden ranks very highly in quality of life and protection of civil liberties. That's how things are. That's a generally known fact. We'll be planting some onions tomorrow unless it rains heavily. As I have already mentioned, we cannot use the future tense, actually any future tense, in the subordinate clauses of time and condition. Unless it rains heavily, it's a conditional clause. So we must say rains, not will rain. We must use the present simple tense when we speak about real conditions in the future. The train leaves at 11:40 tomorrow. That's a schedule, and as I have already mentioned, with timetables and schedules of, let's say, bigger events, like timetables or schedules of transport, different events, something that one person cannot influence, yeah, something bigger, like concerts, exhibitions, etc. We use the present simple tense. We consider the things to be grand, to be big, yeah, to be rigid and difficult to change, permanent and very stable. And that's what the present simple helps us speak about. People normally wear sunscreen in Portugal because the sun here is aggressive. That's a fact. That's what people do. The sun is aggressive here is also a fact. Jane is tall and slim and has green eyes and long red hair. The sentence describes a person, and to describe people and things, we use the present simple. Equal volume of all gases under the same conditions of temperature and pressure contain equal number of molecules. Avogadro's law. This is a law of physics. That's why we use the present simple tense. Yeah, that's something which is always true. Yeah, again, another kind of a fact. How do we know that we must use the present simple tense? As we have already mentioned, we use it to speak about repeated actions in present, about general truths and facts that are true in present. Besides that, every grammatical tense in English has its markers or red flags. You may call them by any name you want, but they are adverbials that help us define what kind of action is taking place. Is it a progressive action? Is it a perfect action? Where exactly are we on the timeline? For convenience, the markers of the present simple tense can be divided into two groups. Those that express present or presentness, and those that express repetition or frequency. Markers that express present or presentness: at present, presently, these days, now, nowadays, currently, at the present time, in this day and age. So as you see, all of these words are pretty general and they speak about something which is true in a bigger now. Not only today, yeah, but maybe for decades. Markers that express repetition or frequency are every, usually, always, regularly, sometimes, seldom or rarely, never, occasionally, from time to time, once, twice, 3 times a day, week, month, and so on and so forth. These markers help us speak about things that repeat from time to time, with different degree of frequency, every day or rarely. Now let's look at some examples with these markers. We seldom go to that restaurant because it's quite expensive. Seldom means rarely, not often. Our uncle and aunt come to see us every summer. We sometimes take our cats for a long walk in the forest. They travel abroad once or twice a year. Every time I see him, his hair is of a different color. My sister never wears makeup. Young people spend less time with their peers and more time online in this day and age. Now we live in the city that mostly speaks French. Now here doesn't mean right here, right now, at this particular moment. Yeah, it's a bigger now. Nowadays, many Europeans prefer riding a bicycle to driving a car. I hope that was comprehensive and I tried to say everything that you might need to know about the present simple tense. Now you just have to memorize all that information and create a system in your head. These tables and examples in this video must be enough for you to form that system. Now let's proceed with the next grammatical tense that exists in the room of the present. We'll be speaking about the present progressive tense. Things are much easier here actually because you already know that the verb to be has different forms. It's am, is, are, depending on what person you are talking about. And the present perfect progressive is formed with the help of this to be form and the main verb with the ending ing. Thus you will have I am playing the guitar now. He is playing the violin. They are singing. I'm not playing the guitar now. She isn't playing the violin. They aren't singing. Am I playing the guitar now? Is she playing the violin? Question mark is missing, I apologize. Are they singing? The verb to be functions here as an auxiliary, so it helps you to create your negative statements and questions, just the way do and does do in the present simple tense. How do we know that we must use the present progressive tense? The present progressive tense is used for temporary situations and actions in progress that are happening right now at the moment of speaking. Please note that when I say right now, I don't necessarily speak about this particular moment. Your now can be bigger. Your now can be this week. Your now can be this year sometimes. That will depend on the context. I'm talking to you now. That's what I'm doing right now. That's a very particular now. But I can also say I'm reading a book on plants now. I'm reading a book. That doesn't mean that I'm doing that right now. That means that I'm doing this week, or I'm doing it this month, every time I have a chance to read. That's what I'm currently reading. So my now here is much bigger than just this particular moment, right? If I'm a representative of a company, I can say my company is currently working on something. Though this project my company is working on may take a lot of days and a lot of months, maybe even several years. But that's a current project and that's what we are currently doing. Let's look at some markers that we use with the present progressive tense. These are all the words that help us speak about something which is short-termed, something that is temporary, not permanent, but temporary. These markers are at present, presently, these days, now or right now, nowadays, currently, at this moment or at this very moment, still, today, this week, this month, this year, at 5 o'clock today, from 5 till 6 today, the whole day today, and while. You see that some markers coincide with the markers of the present simple tense. So your choice of the tense will depend on what exactly is that thing that you want to express. So, for example, I can say, now people spend less time with their friends and more time online. Or I can say, now we're playing golf. That's definitely a different now, isn't it? Let's look at some examples with these markers and the present progressive tense. We are currently working on our new winter collection. That's an example of a bigger now. I'm reading To Kill the Mockingbird now. They're staying at a 5-star hotel downtown. I'm still using that old mixer. Jane is reading while her husband is answering his emails. These days, we aren't jogging in the park. The weather is too cold. Aaron is sleeping in his sister's room while she's in Spain. She is in Spain is the present simple tense because the verb to be cannot be used in the present continuous tense, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. So all the examples here, they speak about things that are going on right now or at this period of time, which is a little bit bigger than this particular moment, but still is temporary. That's what is important. So we can speak about situations that are temporary here, or about the things that are literally in process. like Jane is reading. Yeah, what we express here is the process of reading. So we use the present progressive tense to express temporary actions, actions going on at the present moment, continual processes, certain states or qualities peculiar to the person at a given moment, new tendencies that are different from the past practices, and future arrangements. Again, I underlined number 1 and number 2 because these are the majority of cases in which you will use the present progressive tense to speak about temporary situations and things that are going on right here, right now. Though you will also use this tense to speak about tendencies. For example, our company is becoming more and more powerful or more and more influential in the market. You want to stress the tendency, or the direction in which your company is going. Number 6, future arrangements. That's one of the cases where you use a present tense to speak about some future things. You use the present simple to speak about schedules, as we have already mentioned in this video a little bit earlier, but you use the present progressive tense to speak about the arranged things. For example, appointments or something that you have already planned to do and you discussed it with somebody. Like, we're meeting tomorrow at 5. What you should remember here is that when you use the present simple, you speak about bigger things, things that one person cannot change. But when you speak about the present progressive tense, you speak about things that are personal, your personal arrangements, your personal timetables and schedules, right? So they are not that strict and rigid as those big things that we express with the help of the present simple. Let's try to explain why the present progressive tense is used in the following sentences. I'm cooking a new pie tonight. Because that's something that I'm doing only tonight. We are staying at this place for 10 days. It's a temporary situation that will last only for 10 days. These 10 days we are spending in a particular place, not our whole life, yeah? She's writing a book about dog training. That's what she's doing these days. It's her temporary project. The earth is always moving. That's a continuous process. We can use the present progressive tense to speak about things that are ongoing and continuous. What are you doing tonight? We are talking about a plan of a particular person. That's a personal arrangement in the nearest future. The child is being naughty. That's an interesting case because the verb to be is used here in the present progressive tense. And if you listened attentively, you might have noticed that I said that we cannot use to be in progressive tenses. What's going on here? We use it because to be means to behave here. It is used in a different meaning. So the child is being naughty means the child is misbehaving now. We are studying the present progressive tense now. That's what we are literally doing right now. Their company is working on a new phone. That's an example of a bigger now. They are currently working. That might take a little while. Let me pour you some water. Your hands are still shaking. Still is one of the markers with which we use the present progressive tense, and it shows us that this situation is ongoing. Your hands are now shaking. These people are speaking a language that I don't know. In this particular situation, now. I hope that's clear. The present progressive tense helps us express things that are going on here and now and that are temporary, that are not permanent, not constant. Now let's compare the present simple tense and the present progressive tense with the help of these two sets of examples. In the present progressive tense, you will say, I'm cooking a pie tonight. You will use this tense because you are talking about something that you're going to do only this particular evening. So that's a temporary situation and a pre-planned situation as well. So that's your personal plan for the nearest future. Now let's look to the right. Every Sunday I cook a new pie. That's an action that you repeat every Sunday. A repeated action in the present is expressed with the help of the present simple tense. Number 2. We are staying at this place for 10 days. That's a temporary situation. Only for these 10 days. We live at this place. This is our home. That's a permanent situation. That's where we live. She's writing a book about dog training. A temporary situation. It's her current project. She writes books about dog training. That's what she does as her job, or that's what she does every day. The earth is always moving, a constant process, a process that never stops. We use the present continuous or the present progressive tense here to express that continuity. The earth moves around the sun. It's just a fact. What are you doing tonight? We are asking somebody about his or her plans for this night. What do you do at night? Here we are asking about something that a person does on a regular basis, like every night. So what do you do at night? At night I usually sleep. That's what we do repeatedly. The child is being naughty at this particular moment. The child is naughty. You describe a child this way. This child is naughty. That's a fact. We are studying the present progressive tense now. That's what we are doing at this particular moment in this lesson. And all students of this course study the progressive tense. That's what all students do every year. Their company is working on a new phone currently. Their company works in a phone manufacturing in general. Let me pour you some water. Your hands are still shaking. Your hands are still shaking. They are now shaking. Help him. He's quite old and his hands shake. That's a permanent state of the person. He's old and his hands always shake. These people are speaking a language that I don't know. In this particular situation, I can hear that and I don't understand that. These people speak a language that I don't know. Their mother tongue is unknown to me. So you can see that in the sentences on the left, we speak about temporary situations, situations that will change, that are not always like that. Whereas on the right, you have sentences that speak about something that is permanent, something like a fact or a characteristic of a person, or a characteristic of a course, or a state of affairs. Yeah, something that will be true for a longer while. Now let's talk about what can present some difficulty when we speak about the progressive tenses, all four of them. Verbs in English can be classified into stative and dynamic. The names speak for themselves. Dynamic verbs are also called active verbs because they usually express active and dynamic actions that we can take. Stative verbs usually refer to states and conditions. And states and conditions cannot progress. That's why these verbs are normally not used in progressive tenses. Only dynamic verbs are normally used in progressive tenses. Nevertheless, stative verbs can be used in progressive tenses in two cases. First, when the verb we are talking about is used in its different dynamic meaning. And second, for stylistic reasons, to make your sentence more emotionally colored. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now let's look at what stative verbs normally express. They can express opinions and beliefs, like the verbs to believe, to think, to doubt, etc. Cognition, that is, to know, to understand, to realize, all those verbs that have to do with understanding and perceiving what's going on around you. Emotions, feelings, and attitudes, like to want, to like, to hate, to love, to despise, and lots of other words that express your attitude to something. Senses, like to hear, to smell, to see, to taste, and other verbs like that. Verbs that express possession, to have as synonyms, to own, to possess, to belong, to hold. Stative verbs can also express existence, like to be and to exist. And they also can express abstract relations, to seem, to appear, to consist, to depend, etc. By the way, these verbs to seem, to appear, to consist cannot be used in the passive voice. Let's now look attentively at all these verbs. So when I say, for example, the verb to think is a verb that expresses your belief or your opinion, you might say that, okay, but what about the sentence, I'm thinking about going to the cinema tomorrow? In this case, think does not express your opinion. It speaks about a process that's going on in your head. And that's what I meant when I said that stative verbs can be used in progressive tenses in their other dynamic meanings. Let's look at the verb to hold, for example. To hold belongs to the group of the verbs that express possession. You can be a holder of your driver's license or a holder of some other kind of document. You possess it, you have it, you hold it. But you can also be holding a cup in your hand. In this case, obviously, hold can be used in a progressive tense. So though you can find a lot of lists of those verbs on the internet, like stative verbs, dynamic verbs, learn them by heart, I don't think that it's a very clever idea to learn them by heart. It's better to follow this principle. Those verbs that express intentional action, deliberate action, something that you can do willfully, can be used in progressive tenses because all dynamic actions are intentional. Those verbs that express something you cannot influence, something that happens by itself, or something that just is, that is unintentional things. These are stative verbs and they cannot be used in progressive tenses. So to sum it up, stative verbs express actions and states we cannot control. Dynamic verbs express actions that we can choose to do or not to do. That is intentional actions, right? I have an older sister. I'm having my morning coffee. So in the first sentence, can you influence the situation somehow? You cannot control this, yeah? You cannot change the fact that you have a sister. Have is used in its stative meaning. I'm having my morning coffee. That's something that you do intentionally, and the verb to have has a different meaning here. It means I am drinking coffee. He feels betrayed and he's feeling his way in the dark. In the first sentence, feels is used in its stative meaning. He feels betrayed and he cannot actually control the way he feels. Here we cannot control our feelings. He's feeling his way in the dark. To feel is used here in a different meaning. In its dynamic meaning, he's touching the walls, touching the pieces of furniture in order to find where exactly he is in the room. That's an intentional action. That's a dynamic action. That's why we can use it in a continuous tense. I see some lights over there and I'm seeing my friends tonight. I see because I have eyes. That's a condition I am in. That's a stative verb. I see some lights over there. I am seeing my friends tonight. To see is used in a different meaning here. It means I am meeting my friends tonight. That's what you do intentionally, on purpose, and you can't control it. You sound tired and the guards are sounding the alarm. You sound tired. Your voice sounds tired. You cannot control that. It happens by itself. Your voice sounds as it sounds. You cannot do anything about it. The guards are sounding the alarm. They do it on purpose. They make it produce sounds. He's tasting the soup and the soup tastes salty. The first sentence here is in the present progressive tense because to taste, something like to try food, to see how it tastes, yeah, to feel the taste, is an intentional action. So it's a dynamic meaning of this verb. The soup tastes salty is a state. It's a state of the soup. It's a stative verb. So we do not use any continuous form here. He holds a postgraduate degree and the girl is holding a doll in her hand. She has a postgraduate degree. A stative meaning of the verb to hold, and the girl is holding a doll in her hand. That's what she is doing on purpose. A dynamic meaning of the verb to hold. Before we proceed, let's sum it all up. The present progressive tense can express actions in progress temporary actions, pre-planned actions. And it can be used in emotionally colored sentences. These are four main cases where you will use the present progressive tense. Sometimes they will be intertwined, so your action might be both in progress and temporary, or temporary and pre-planned, that doesn't matter. But these are all the things that these tense can convey. Let's compare. Who is sleeping in this room and who sleeps in this room? Who is sleeping in this room now, today, at this short period of time? We are talking about a temporary situation. Who sleeps in this room is a permanent situation. Here we are asking who is the owner of this room, who lives in this room permanently. So who is sleeping in this room today or at this moment, who sleeps in this room usually. You're putting the iron in the wrong place and you put the iron in the wrong place. So the first sentence can express that something is going on right now, so now you're putting the iron in the wrong place, it's only now. The second sentence tells us about something that the person normally does. It's not an emotionally colored sentence, it's just a fact. He or she puts that iron in the wrong place regularly. His hands shake and his hands are shaking. His hands shake, that's what happens always. His hands are shaking now. He's stressed now, or he's afraid of something and his hands are shaking. I don't eat fish and I'm not eating fish. I don't eat fish. I never do. I'm not eating fish tonight due to some reasons. Here we compared temporary situations with permanent situations. That is, we actually compared the present progressive tense with the present simple tense. Temporary versus permanent. Now let's look at some different situations in which you will use the present progressive tense. He always interrupts people and he's always interrupting me. You see that we use always in both cases, but we use different tenses. Why do we do that? He always interrupts me. It's a neutral statement. It's not emotionally colored sentence. He always interrupts me. I just state a fact, but he's always interrupting me. It's an emotionally colored sentence. So what do I do here? I combine the present progressive tense with the marker that belongs to the present simple. He is always interrupting. He's constantly interrupting me. This way I highlight my irritation, my dissatisfaction with something. So he always interrupts people is a neutral characteristic, and he is always interrupting me is disapproval. I love long dresses and I'm loving this new dress. I love new dresses. Again, it's a neutral sentence. It's a fact. I'm loving this new dress. It's an emotional experience. When you go through something that you have strong feelings about in a particular moment, you love something very much in a particular moment, or vice versa, you hate something because you're angry. You can use the present progressive tense with the stative verbs. It's like the slogan of McDonald's, I'm loving it. Normally you would say, I love McDonald's, I love their hamburgers. But I'm loving it. That's what they say in their advertisement. I think you are right and I'm thinking about my presentation. I believe that you are right, that's my opinion, that's a state I am in. I am thinking about my presentation, that's what I'm actively doing now. I'm in process of thinking. So here we look at how stative verbs can be used and must be used sometimes in progressive tenses. I'm leaving for Berlin tomorrow. The train to Berlin leaves tomorrow. That's an interesting case because in the first sentence you speak about your plan. That's what you are going to do tomorrow. The train to Berlin leaves tomorrow. That's a schedule of a train. That's why we must use the present simple tense. Remember, we speak about grand things, big things, things that are difficult to change with the help of the present simple tense. Whereas when we need to express our own plans and what we are going to do, we are little people, and our lives are not that huge and influential as we might sometimes think. When we are speaking about our personal little plans, we use the present continuous tense or to be going to. Personal arrangement versus schedule of something bigger than one human's plans. Jane is answering the professor's questions, and why don't you answer, Jane? Jane is answering, it's an action in progress. Why don't you answer? The fact is important, not the process. Now pay attention to these two examples, please, because both speak about something that is happening here and now. Jane is answering the professor's questions right now. She's in the process of answering. Why don't you answer, Jane? For example, the phone is ringing and you say, oh, why don't you answer? You don't say, why aren't you answering? Why? Because that's not a process that is important here. We are not talking about the process. We are talking about the fact. Why don't you do it? And Dave has a new car versus Dave is having breakfast with his friend. Dave has a new car. That's a state. He has a new car. Dave is having breakfast with his friend, so he is eating now. So with these examples that you now see, I wanted to illustrate different ways in which we can use progressive tenses. Our choice will always depend on what is the thing that we want to express. So we should not stick to that list of verbs, saying that this verb is stative. The rule says I cannot use stative verbs in progressive tenses. We should always consider the context and the idea that we want to convey. Let's now do a short exercise together. Are these sentences correct? Let's see. The first one, she's owning 3 cars. Is that sentence correct? Does it sound nice to you? No, of course it doesn't, because it's incorrect. What should we say? She owns 3 cars, because the verb to own is stative and it's used in its main meaning to have. It's a fact. The next sentence, they are having dinner. Is the sentence correct? Yes, it is. They are eating now. We are having a big family. Is it correct? No. We should say we have a big family because the verb to have here is used in its main stative meaning. We have a big family. That's how things are for us. Number 4. He knows this town very well. Correct. He knows. The verb expressing cognition, a stative verb, and it's used in its main meaning to have information in one's head. She is knowing the subject well. Obviously, this sentence is not correct. She knows the subject well. The same verb to know, the same meaning. Number 6. I consider my options before I make a decision. Is it correct? Yes, it is. I always do that. That's how I normally behave. I am considering my options before I make a decision. Is also correct. That's a little bit a different idea that you express with this sentence. Now, I am considering before I will make. We cannot put will here, but we're talking about a particular situation here. I'm considering my options and then I will make a decision. He weighs 100 kilograms. That's correct. They are weighing each bag before delivery. Is it correct? Yes, it is. That's what they are doing now before they deliver something. Number 10, the car is appearing okay, but I need to drive it to be sure. Is everything fine with this sentence? No, it's not. It's incorrect because we cannot use the verb to appear in progressive tenses because it always is a stative verb. Now let's do another exercise. We need to choose between the present simple and the present progressive tense. Remember that you need to get rid of the particle to. We only want the verb in its proper form. What I suggest you should do is please pause this video and write the sentences down, make your choices, and then we'll check that together. I hope that's what you did. Let's check. He studies Spanish at the university. Why? Because that's what he does. He goes to classes every day, 5 days a week. Pay attention that we replace Y with I and then we add the ending es. I have explained that already in this video, but I will remind you, we do that because we have a consonant before Y, that is letter D. Number 2, today we are studying a new topic because that's what's going on today. It's a temporary situation. Look at your finger, it is bleeding now. When you have a sentence like that, look at something. That means that you're talking about a situation that is happening right here and right now. It is bleeding now. When you cut your skin, it bleeds though. Why? Because here we speak about effect. The ferry leaves in 10 minutes. We are leaving for San Francisco in 10 days. In both cases, we speak about schedules, but as we have already discussed, in number 5, we speak about a grander thing. We speak about a schedule of transport. That's when we use the present simple tense to denote something that is yet to come. When we speak about our personal plans, we use the present progressive tense or to be going to. I speak about to be going to in another video. That's the video on periphrastic models, and you can find a link to this video down below. Number 7, he usually smokes when he's nervous. Every time he is nervous, he takes a cigarette. That's his routine. That's what usually happens. And usually here is your marker, the marker of the present simple tense. He merely opens his lips while he is smoking. What's the difference between this sentence and the sentence number 7? Number 7 speaks about a routine and number 8 speaks about a process. Though it is repeated, it is a process, and that's what we want to stress. Every time he is smoking or while he is smoking, he merely opens his lips. You see, we can use different tenses to highlight different things and make different stresses, different semantic stresses in our sentences. Number 9, now we rarely go to public places. Though now is used here, we are not talking about this particular situation. Now here means presently. Now my sister and I are going to the bank. Are you with us? In this situation, vice versa, we are talking about a temporary situation, something that we are doing right now. She reads only dead authors. That's what she does. She likes to read books, the authors of which are already dead. Because, for example, she considers these books to be tried and true. She is reading some new authors now. So now she is experimenting, she is trying some new authors. And this is a shorter now, so these days, maybe this month, she has a vacation and that's what she is doing. This exercise illustrates how you can use the same verb in different tenses, even when you speak about the same periods of time. Okay, so we have discussed the present simple tense and all the peculiarities of this tense, all the rules that you must know to use this tense. We have discussed the present progressive tense in all detail. Now let's move to the next present tense that we must know, because this is a tense that many English learners who don't have perfect tenses in their native languages consider to be vague and convoluted, and they try to avoid it. But please believe me that you cannot do without this tense. Perfect tenses are very important. They are the core of the language. The present perfect tense is the tense that you use on a regular basis every single day, because this tense helps you to speak about things that are important, things that influence your now. Actually, you can avoid using past simple, but you cannot avoid using the present perfect. Of course, I'm joking. You must learn all of the tenses in the language, yeah, but believe me, the present perfect tense is something that you really need to know. That's a very important tense. So let's get started. To form the present perfect tense, we use the auxiliary verb to have, which has two forms: have for I, we, you, they, and has for he, she, it. And we use the third form of the verb, which is also called participle to. Where do you find that form? Of course, in the table of irregular verbs. That's the third column. You should learn the verbs in the table of irregular verbs as fast as you can, because that's an absolute must. I have bought some berries. You have baked a cake. We have eaten it together. They have asked for the recipe. Now we have a cake. As you see, all these sentences speak about something which has a result in the present. You cannot use the past simple tense here. You cannot say, I baked a cake. Here it is. I have baked a cake. And here it is. Perfect comes from the Latin verb perfectum, meaning completed. And by completed, we don't mean that something happened in the past and finished and let's forget it. By completed, we mean that we have a result. And it's important for us here and now. So everything that influences your present is actually perfect. Everything that happened once upon a time and does not influence your present anymore is the past simple. Often your choice between these two tenses is very personal. You can say, I have loved her, or you can say, I loved her. These two statements say absolutely different things about you and your feelings to your interlocutor. The first sentence, I have loved her, means that your heart is still broken, that you still feel something towards the person. I loved her, that's just an episode of your life that you mention in your conversation. That happened to you once upon a time, but that doesn't matter anymore. That doesn't influence your present anymore. Let's return to our cake here. So I have bought some berries. Here they are. Yeah, I have bought them and brought them home. You have baked a cake for me. Here it is, this wonderful cake. We have eaten it together and now we are happy and our stomachs are full. And they, our friends, have asked for the recipe. And now I am writing that recipe down for them. The whole situation here is in present. That's why it's the present perfect tense. And though we speak about things that are completed, we speak about the present because that's where this tense actually is important, in the present. She has made a cake, he has tried a piece, it has gone. The result is in the present. There is no cake anymore. It's gone. He's eaten it. Let's look at the table of different types of the sentences and how have changes. Yeah, so we use have with I, we use they, and has with he, she, it, as I have already mentioned. It is an auxiliary verb, so it takes not when we speak about negative sentences like she hasn't baked a cake and he hasn't baked a cake. It hasn't eaten a cake, for example. When we speak about interrogative sentences, that is questions, we put the auxiliary verb have or has to the beginning of the question. This is what we do with all the auxiliary verbs. Have I baked a cake? Have we baked a cake? Have you baked a cake? Has she baked a cake? Has he baked a cake? Have they baked a cake? The participle to, that is baked in our case, remains unchanged. The present perfect tense expresses an action completed before the present moment and connected with it It is an action that has happened recently and brought a result to the present. That's extremely important. So everything that you want to express that is connected to your present or somehow influences your present is in the present perfect tense. The result of such action impacts the present, that is, it influences the present. It's still important in the present. I have broken your favorite cup. I'm sorry. There is no more cup. The result of this action is that there is no more cup. They have adopted a puppy. The result of this action is that they now have a dog. I have already finished the presentation. Look. The result of this action is the presentation. She has lost the key to the gate. The result of this action is that she can't open the gate and get home. How do we know that we must use the present perfect tense? So once again, it expresses completed actions connected to the present. Also, we have some markers that identify that this action is such that is connected to the present. They are already, just, recently, of late, so far, and yet. Please note that yet may have different meanings. It can be used in a different meaning synonymously to nevertheless and in spite of. She doesn't know the language well, yet she managed to find a job. She doesn't know the language well, nevertheless she managed to find a job. Yeah? So we are not talking about that meaning when we speak about the present perfect tense. We speak about yet that is used in negative sentences and in questions. We'll now see. So let's look at the examples with these markers. The child has already done his homework. I have just sent a letter to my sister. You have been to his shop recently, haven't you? We haven't seen them of late. She has tried 4 recipes from that book so far. He hasn't painted the walls yet, so now the walls are not painted yet. Have you ordered a new kitchen yet? Not yet. These words already, just, recently, and the rest of them, these markers are tightly connected to the present perfect tense. Then, we use the present perfect tense for actions which began in the past, have been going on up to the present, and are still ongoing. The markers used in such case are since and for. I'm talking about it separately because this is a somewhat different type of the present perfect tense, or different type of cases in which you use the present perfect tense. Let's see. We have lived in Paris since 1992, and we have lived in Paris for 30 years now. That means that there was a point in time where we started living in Paris. And we still are in Paris. So that's a situation that is still true. It's not one particular action that influenced the present. That's the whole situation. I haven't seen her since the day we broke up, and I haven't seen her for a couple of years. That's still an ongoing period of time that the situation is still true for the present moment. The difference between since and for is that for is used with a period of time. For example, something started 3 hours ago and is still here. In this case, we can say that something has been for 3 hours, for a period of time. Since marks the start of a period, yeah, it marks a point in time. Since Monday till now, yeah, since Monday, something has been. Both sets of sentences speak of the same period of time, but they speak about it differently, yeah, from the perspective of a period of time and from the perspective of a moment at which something started, yeah, and is true nowadays too. We have lived in Paris since 1992, and we have lived in Paris for 30 years now. We still live in Paris, so in both cases we speak about the same period of time, but from different angles, right? And I haven't seen her since the day we broke up, and I haven't seen her for a couple of years. Again, in both cases, we don't see each other. That's the same period of time we are talking about, but from different perspectives. The third thing about the present perfect tense is we use the present perfect tense to speak about life experience. The markers here would be ever and never. So remember that game, never have I ever. Yeah? Have you ever been to the Netherlands? I have never eaten venison. Have you? Both situations are true for now, but may change in the future. So one day you may go to the Netherlands, and one day I may try venison. Please note the difference between the present perfect tense and the present simple tense. I never go to bed after midnight. That's my routine, the way I usually behave, what I do on a regular basis. I have never stayed up till 1 a.m. It's my experience of past and present. I have never tried that yet, but one day maybe I will go to bed that late. Now please pay attention to a very specific marker of the present perfect tense, a very specific type of a sentence in which you always should use the present perfect tense. These are sentences, it's the first, second, etc. time, and this is the first, second, etc. time that you have done something. It's the first time she has seen an ocean. Just memorize that. Just remember that with these structures, we always use the present perfect tense. Why? Because this action marks the end of the period, but that happens in the very moment of your mentioning it, and is still considered to be your present, something that is true in the present. Now let's talk about those situations where you must avoid using the present perfect tense. When a particular point of time in the past is mentioned, in questions specifying exact time and place of an action, and in the phrase what did you say and similar. Let's look at this dialogue. I've been to the new mall recently. It is enormous. Really? When did you go? We went there last Sunday. So you see that in the first sentence, the present perfect is used because a person expresses a piece of his or her news. I have been there. That's something that I will now share with you. In the second sentence, another person asks when. And this when nails us to a particular moment in the past. So when a particular point of time in the past is mentioned, the present perfect is not used. That doesn't mean that you should use a particular date, or a particular time of the day. When is enough. So this question word is enough to nail us down to a particular moment in the past. In these types of questions, in the questions with when, we do not use the present tense. And then the third line says, we went there last Sunday. Why? Because again, last Sunday specifies a particular point of time in the past. Another dialogue to consider. Look, I've bought a new suit for work. Wow, it looks gorgeous. Where did you buy it? In the mall. In this question, where did you buy it, we specify exact place of an action, which is also a thing that you do not do with the present perfect tense. Another dialogue. Have you heard the news? Dave's been suspended. What did you just say? Didn't you hear? The first sentence uses the present perfect tense, which is obvious. That's a piece of news we want to share with a friend or whoever. But the second and the third line use the past simple tense, though we are obviously talking about something that has just happened. Why do we use the past simple tense? That's what we normally do with such reactions. What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? Did you hear that sound? We don't use the present perfect because we don't care about the result, we care about the fact. As to the present perfect tense, the most important thing that you should remember is this result in the present. Everything you express with the present perfect has its result in the present, in this or that form. And one last thing to say is, sometimes I'm asked, why do we use the past simple in sentences like Bell invented the telephone if we still have telephones and we use this invention and it still influences our reality, what would you say? The answer to this question is it's not a piece of news anymore. That's not something hot today. That's something that happened many years ago, and it's just a fact from the past. Yes, we do have telephones now, but I have bought a new telephone. It's a piece of news, but Bell invented a telephone. It's not. We learn things and we understand things by looking at them at different angles, repeating them and listening to explanations in different words. So I hope in my words you will find the answers to your questions, and what I have told about the present perfect today will help you in the future. The last present tense that we are going to talk about in this video and this part of this big lecture on the English tenses is the present perfect progressive tense. So this tense combines some characteristics of the present perfect tense and of the present progressive tense. And we can see it right here. Then we have been, like another auxiliary verb, and then instead of participle 2 we have participle 1, that is the verb with the ing ending. I have been dreaming, we have been dreaming, you have been dreaming, she has been dreaming, he has been dreaming, they have been dreaming. So the principle here is the same. With the third person singular, you don't use have, you use has. The negative particle not in negative statements is added to have or has. I haven't been dreaming, we haven't been dreaming, they haven't been dreaming, she hasn't been dreaming, he hasn't been dreaming, and they haven't been dreaming. In questions or in interrogative sentences, you put the auxiliary verb to have to the beginning of the question. Have I been dreaming? Have we been dreaming? Have you been dreaming? Has she been dreaming? Has he been dreaming? And have they been dreaming? Don't forget about been. That's what sometimes happens, yeah? Remember that there are two auxiliary verbs. Have, that takes this not and goes to the first place in questions, and been, that stays in front of your main verb. The present perfect progressive tense can be inclusive and exclusive. What does it mean? Inclusive includes this particular moment of time, that is now. It's more than now. Exclusive ends right here and right now. Let's look at the examples. We have been living in this house since 1990 and we still live in it. So it's an example of an inclusive present perfect tense. The present moment is included. Your eyes are red. Has she been crying? She isn't crying now. That's an exclusive present perfect progressive tense, because she has already finished crying by now, but her eyes are still red, and that's a result that we brought to the present. But she's not crying anymore. Now is excluded, yeah? This difference is the key to understanding where we should use the present perfect progressive tense and not the past simple tense, for example. The present perfect progressive tense is used to express an action which began in the past, was going on up to the present, and is still going on. That's inclusive use. An action which was recently in progress but is no longer going on in the present. That's exclusive use. The present perfect progressive tense uses the following markers: since and for. These are the same markers that we talked about when we discussed the present perfect tense. And sometimes the present perfect tense and the present perfect progressive tense can be used interchangeably. They have been dating since January and she has been playing the piano for already 2 hours. Most of these examples are the examples of inclusive use. Yeah, so these are the actions that have been going on for a while and are still going on. A result of the action expressed by the verb should be considered as a marker of the present progressive tense. What does that mean? That sometimes you don't have any markers at all, but you know that you must use the present perfect progressive tense. How? Because there is an obvious result, and this result is your marker. Your eyes are red. Have you been crying? Your eyes are red is your marker because this is a result that we have in the present, a result of some action that has happened recently. We cannot say, have you cried, though. Your eyes are red is a very visible result. This is a situation in which we can find ourselves after a long while. Have you been crying? It should have taken you a while. The action was ongoing. Look, your boots are covered with mud. What on earth have you been doing? Again, we have a result here. That's a kind of result that we could only get doing something for a longer while. Again, to ask, what on earth have you done, is not correct here. What on earth have you been doing for your boots to get that dirty? Why are you panting? Have you been running? Normally it is necessary to cover a bigger distance than just like 2 steps, yeah, to start panting. So, have you been running? The present perfect progressive tense is used. The ground is soaking wet. It has been raining. Another example of a very visible result, a result that could only be brought by something lasting for a longer while. It has been raining all night long, for example, and that's why the ground is soaking wet. She is tired and needs some time for herself. She has been seeing lots of people and she is tired. Why? Not just because she talked to one friend, but because she has been seeing a lot of people for a while. She has had a lot of conversations and now she is tired because of all those things that were going on. What a mess! What has been going on here? Again, to create a mess, you need some time. Yeah, you need to do a lot of things. So what has been going on here is the best choice here, right? In all of these sentences, I highlighted the results. And these results are the things that show you that you must use the present progressive tense. How long is also used with the present perfect progressive tense because it speaks about something that was going on for a while and can bring a result to the present. How long have you been working here? How long has it been raining? How long has he been learning Swedish? But note that we can also use not the present perfect progressive with how long. How long have you known him? Known is a stative verb. How long have they been married? To be is a stative verb. How long has he had that car? Have is a stative verb. And that's why we cannot use them in progressive tenses. They are stative verbs. That's why we cannot use them in the present perfect progressive tense, because they all are stative verbs and they are used in this stative meaning, in their main meanings here. Also, please, let's pay attention to these sentences. How long is it since you last saw him? The present simple is used. It's been 2 years. How long does it take you to get to the office? It takes me half an hour. How long did it take to make the cake? It took me about an hour. How long does it take you to get to the office? How long does it take you? You're talking about a factual kind of information here. It takes me half an hour. That's a fact. So that's why the present simple is used. How long did it take to make the cake? How long did it take you yesterday? For example, you are talking about a situation that happened somewhere in the past. You just want to know this factual information about the past. It took me about an hour. Let's now talk about what we call the present perfect progressive exclusive. I see some people struggle with defining what is the result in the present, when is it important, when it is not important. Let's look at this drawing of mine When we speak about present perfect progressive tense, we speak about something that was going on for a while, not necessarily for a long while. It not necessarily was a process that was uninterrupted, that might have been a series of actions. But this is something, some activity that was happening for a while. And this activity, these processes, they brought a result into the present. They influenced the present in a way. That's what we should care about. Something was going on and it brought its results. And we can see those results in the present. That's what is important. That's why I depicted it this way, like something convoluted. We don't care what kind of action it was. What we do care about is that it took a while and it influenced the present. Let's look at some examples. It has been raining. The ground is wet. We can't say it has rained, because when we say it has rained, we speak about the fact that it has rained. That's what is important here, not the result of the rain. If we say it rained, that would be a sentence about a situation that took place some time ago. And if it rained the day before yesterday, what should be the result in the present? The ground is not wet. It has been raining, and that's why the ground is wet now. Because the rain has been falling for a while, long enough to make the ground wet, and we see it now. I have been going to the gym. I'm fit now. The result of my going to the gym for a while is that now I am fit. Of course, it's not done overnight. You cannot acquire a good shape in a week or even in a month. Yeah, you would need a longer period of time. And you have been doing those exercises. You have been going to the gym for a while, and now you are fit. Another example, she has been hiking. Her feet are sore. Her feet now are sore because she has been hiking for a day, or for many hours. And this brought the result, her feet are sore. So as you see in all of these examples, the result that we are talking about is pronounced. It is something that could be brought about only by an action that was going on for a while and influenced the present enough for us to see a pronounced, visible result. Here we are talking about things that were going on before our now, and that's why I will remind you, we call this type of the present perfect progressive exclusive. Should we use the present progressive tense or the present perfect progressive? In both cases, we will this way or another be speaking about now. But in the case of the present progressive tense, now is what we are concentrated on. Imagine a ray of light that is directed onto now. So now is what we are talking about, now is what we are interested in, this particular moment, this very moment. That's what we should care about when we speak in the present progressive tense. Now I am talking to you, now I am reading a book, now I am drinking tea, now we are working in the field. Whatever the activity is, what we want to convey to our interlocutor or to our reader is that this thing is going on now. This is what we are doing now. That's what we want to drag our listeners' attention to. Let's look at some examples. I'm playing the piano now. We are seeing the professor today. She's writing a new article. You remember that your now can be bigger than this particular moment. Yeah, that can be a little bit faster period of time. What you want to drag attention to is now. When we speak in the present perfect progressive, we speak about now and some time that preceded now. I've been playing the piano for already an hour now. It's not only now that I care about. Yes, I am playing the piano now, but what I want to drag your attention to is that I have already been playing, for 2 hours or for an hour now. I've been seeing the professor lately. I have occasional meetings, or occasional appointments with the professor these days, but I also have been having them for a while, yes. So, for example, for the last 3 months, I have been coming to the professor in order to discuss something with him or her. She's been writing for this magazine since 2019. Now she is also writing, I mean not literally now, but these days, a bigger now again. She's still writing for this magazine, but she also has been writing for it all those years, starting from 2019. Now let's discuss the difference between the present perfect progressive and the present perfect, or the present perfect simple, as we can also call it. These tenses, though they can often be used interchangeably, have their peculiarities. So when we speak about a result and duration, when our action is still in progress, we use the present perfect progressive tense. When it's only about a result and our action has already finished and brought some result to the present, it's the present perfect tense. Let's see. I've been writing books since I was 27. I have written a book. Will you proofread it for me? Result plus duration. I have been writing. I have already written some books and I will probably be writing more. Result. I have written a book. Here it is. So that's what I'm talking about a particular result in the present, and that's it. No duration is mentioned. The band have been recording a new album for a while. They have probably already recorded some songs, but the album is not finished yet. They have been doing it for a while and they are still doing it now. The band have already released 5 albums. The result is 5 albums. They have already recorded 5 albums. They have been building this house for a year. You see, the process is still ongoing. In the second case, they have already built that house. We'll speak about the result. So here is this house. They have built it. So as you see, in both cases, we do speak about some result. But in the case of the present perfect progressive, this result is not finished. It's not full yet. We are kind of on our way to a completion. When we speak about the present perfect, what we are interested in and what we can express with this tense is a finished result. It's something that we already have now and we consider it to be a complete thing. I have been reading for a while and I have read that book. We've been gardening and we've planted 100 tulip bulbs. He's been working all day long and he's finished the drawing. She has been traveling for a while and she has been to 5 countries. I hope this is clear. Sometimes the difference is subjective. Only the speaker's desire to stress that the action took a lot of time is the reason to use a progressive tense form. Let's see what I mean. We have lived here for 10 years and we have been living here for 10 years. The choice of the tense is absolutely up to you, whether you feel like that was a long period of time or not. I've tried to reach him via the phone, but it seems he's not at home. And I've been trying to reach him for eternity now. Will he ever pick up his phone? The first sentence is neutral, the second is a little bit emotional. Let's now look at how the present progressive, the present perfect and the present perfect progressive tenses can coexist in one dialogue. I have been writing some stuff since I quitted my job. I bet you've already written a novel. Not yet, but I'm working on the last chapter. That's awesome. I want to be the first one to read it as soon as you have finished. In the first sentence, I have been writing some stuff since I quitted my job. The person speaks about a period of time which preceded now and is still going on. I bet you've already written a novel, says another person. I bet you have already written. So he or she thinks that there is a result, that the book is already written. Not yet, but I'm working on the last chapter. The present progressive tense tells us that the action is ongoing now. That's all that it says. And the last sentence, I want to be the first one to read it as soon as you have finished, has an adverbial clause of time that is introduced by as soon as. So in such clauses, we cannot use any future tenses. That's why we opt for a present tense. In our case, it's the present perfect tense because we want to stress the result. As soon as your book is complete, as soon as you have this result, I will read it. You can absolutely use present simple in such a sentence. That will not stress that you will only read it when it is finished. It will be a more general statement, yeah, as soon as you finish it. But as soon as you have finished, I'll be the first to read it. As soon as you have the result, give me, I will read this book. That's what the present perfect helps us express here. Let's now do a short exercise together. Again, I suggest that you pause this video and write the sentences down with the options that you consider to be correct, and then return to the video and check it with me. So we need to choose among the present progressive, the present perfect, and the present perfect progressive tenses. The first one, Mrs. Lee has been teaching at the school for 10 years. That's what her job has been for all these years. We have a period of time mentioned for 10 years that works as a kind of a marker for us here. And knowing that she is still a teacher, we assume that, yeah, because we're not talking about the past tenses here. So we presume that she is a teacher now, and she has been a teacher for a number of years, yeah, that's what we will use. She has been teaching. We have already studied the subjunctive mood. Already is one of the markers of the present perfect tense, and it shows us that something has already been finished or completed. We have already studied, and now we know it. Number 3, she has been getting letters from him for a while. She's very happy every time they arrive. She is happy now, she is still getting them, and she has been getting them for a while. This is a thing that has been going on for a while before now, and is now continuing. Number 4, we have had 3 tests so far this term. This term is not finished yet, and we will probably have some more. Number 5, I haven't received any letters from the bureau yet. Yet is one of the markers of the present perfect tense, and it shows us that the period of time we are talking about is still going on. I haven't received any letters yet, but maybe I will soon. Number 6, dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years. All of them died many thousands of years ago, and since then they have been extinct. Number 7, I haven't tried any Asian food. That's a sentence about somebody's experience, and usually we speak about our experience in the present perfect tense. Why? Because our life is still continuing, and maybe one day we will try some Asian food. Please be quiet. I don't understand what I am reading. Obviously, we are talking about now, because we say, please be quiet. Yeah, so now I am reading, don't disturb me. Jane has been reading books on time management all summer. What do we get from this sentence? That it's still summer. Maybe the summer is about to end, but it's still summer, and she has been reading all summer long. So far, she has read everything we have on that subject in our library. If in number 9 we speak about a duration and a result, obviously she has read some of those books already. In number 10 we speak only about the result. She has read everything we have. Number 11, it has been a month since I last saw Gabriel. I last saw Gabriel is a point in time in the past, and since that point we haven't seen each other. So this period of time has not finished yet. We haven't seen each other yet. Number 12, why are your hands so dirty? I have been weeding the flower beds. We have a pronounced result. Our hands are dirty. That means that we have been doing something dirty for a while, and that's how our hands have become dirty. Number 13, they are playing chess. Good God! They have been playing chess for already 3 hours. They are playing now. The first sentence is in the present progressive tense, and for already 3 hours means that the action we are talking about precedes our now. So they have been playing chess for already 3 hours now. Now and 3 hours before. It's so hard to find a good job these days. I know. I have been there. That's a phrase you may hear often when you describe your situation to somebody or you speak about some difficulties you encounter. Somebody might tell you, oh, I've been there. I've been there. Where? What they mean is that they know what you're talking about. They have done that thing. There is another expression, been there, done that. Means that I've been in your shoes. I have done the things that you are now doing. What are we speaking about here? About somebody's experience, life experience. If some of these sentences puzzle you, please don't be shy to ask questions. Write them down in the comment section below. For now, that's all I have to say about the 4 present tenses. I hope this video was useful. I hope that you found answers to your questions. My purpose here was to give a full picture of the 12 active tenses of the English language. I wanted to put everything together for it to be a comprehensive guide to the English tenses. The videos on this channel are mostly for those of you who want to study, who want to learn the English language by themselves, or who doesn't have another option than to learn the language by themselves. And I wanted to create a place where you can find all the information that you need collected together. If you watch these videos attentively, you will know everything that you need to know. Next time we'll proceed with the past tenses. Subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss any lessons, and see you in the next video.